Welcome to the Learning Lounge. I am Dr. Joel Gardner, and today I'm here with Dr. Niccole Hyatt. Collaboration, working with a client in a consulting and particularly an instructional design consulting scenario can be pretty difficult. And there are a lot of potential problems and issues that might arise as you're working with those clients. And so today we're going to talk with Dr. Hyatt, Niccole, about your experiences. So let me just read a little bit about Niccole. She is the Executive Director of Design Services here at I4. Niccole served at Franklin University in many instructional design roles since 2003 and has also led design teams for corporate or nonprofit and academic organizations. So a lot of experiences working with clients. So excited to get your perspectives on how to overcome these potential obstacles and have a successful interaction when working with clients. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Joel. I appreciate coming to the Learning Lounge.
Yeah, really glad to have you. So the first question is, an instructional designer's role is to provide solutions to their clients. But like we said, there's a lot of obstacles that can sometimes get in the way. Time constraints, communication barriers, just the general complexity of design work by itself. So what are some of the key strategies to overcoming these potential obstacles that might come in?
Whenever possible, regardless of the type of client that I'm working with, I always attempt to build trust.
Okay.
Right? So we get the gig because we're credible, but we still have to work on building the relationship and building the trust. Once trust is there or in motion, then we can start setting those expectations. Sometimes a client is going to have one set of expectations and I'm going to have another set of expectations for the team. They may think that something's going to take 3 months. I'm going to think it's going to take 3 days. And so we have to negotiate and have those kinds of conversations.
Okay. So trust and expectations. But how do you do that? How do you build trust? Because in a business scenario, right, it can be difficult to actually build that trust. What are some of the key things for that?
I listen. I ask a lot of questions and then I sit back and listen. Okay. What I find, regardless if I'm working with a Fortune 500 company or an academic institution, I think that I'm a master question asker. So it gives me the opportunity to get them talking about some things that they may not have considered previously and saying, maybe we should look at that. And then they see me as a trusted partner. So I'm going in as a partner, not as a client, customer, kind of, you're paying me to do this. Yeah. Right. You're not buying this at a big box store. This is something that we are collaboratively working towards making better.
So, and asking the questions and then listening well seems to be a really important way to build that trust. It sounds like the Covey principle, right? Seek first to understand and then be understood.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's certainly one of my mantras, to seek first, seek to understand. And that tends to make them feel more comfortable because they know that I'm listening to them. Yeah.
Okay. So build the trust. Make sure you have matched expectations, right? That makes a lot of sense. Anything else that you do to really overcome these potential obstacles that might be in the way in that
Check in early and often.
Okay, good.
Set up standard meetings where we're going through the project. Sometimes those meetings are a collective meeting with the entire team. So the designers or graphic designers and editors may all come to one meeting. There's also times when, as leadership, I need to meet directly with their leadership. And so I check in with them and say, hey, what are you hearing? What do you want to see done differently? How's this feeling? I give them that opportunity. It allows them to status appropriately without thinking that someone's feelings in the room are going to be hurt, as well as if they have question marks in their mind about something that they don't want to relay in front of the entire team, I can help them with that as well.
Okay, great. So you're kind of describing this kind of a a couple different levels of organization here, if I can say it that way. So I know you've worked as an instructional designer for many years.
Probably too many that we want to put on
We won't talk about
record.
But then also you've had a lot of years as managing and leading instructional design functions. So there's a distinction there. And even as you said, how we interact with the client, we really try to distinguish those. And I've seen that play out in our work with clients here at Franklin University. But what are some of what's the shift for you, or what's the really big difference in your approach with working with the client? So an instructional designer is often working with a SME, content expert, and so forth, maybe some programmers, depending on the scenario. But the client or the manager or leader of design has different expectations. So how do you sort of describe the differences between those?
Well, I know that our instructional designers work best when they have clear direction, right? And so I'm always seeking to understand in such a way that they have clear understanding and direction as to where they're going with the project. As a leader, I have to help the client, that partner, get to that level. So I say, help me to understand this in such a way that I can explain it to the design team so that your vision then becomes something that we actually is tangible. We see it. Okay, so I think that the direction becomes a lot easier when I, as a leader, I'm pushing that envelope with the client and saying, let's talk about this more, and what does that look like? And this will ultimately help you have a better product. I know these are hard questions sometimes. I know that they're uncomfortable. We're not here to crush anyone's ego. We're here to be very mindful of that. There's not a judgment. We're trying to make it better. And through that trust building and the expectation setting, I think we get to that point where they're comfortable enough to say, I really haven't figured this out yet.
Great. So then we know it's a shift in what our role is, right? If they don't have total clarity. But see, a couple of questions about that. Well, at least one for sure.
Sure.
You were talking about that. Now, you come at that from a perspective of having been a designer and having a lot of background in design. So what about a manager who doesn't have that design background? Can they even do that? Like, how does that shift the procedures for them?
If you are a manager of an instructional design shop, and that happens often, right?
Right.
Especially if they know the type of content extremely well. There are times when they are put in positions of leading learning professionals, right? If you find yourself in that type of situation, get to know your designers really, really well.
Good.
Understand what kinds of questions they're going to be asking. Even have pre-meetings with your design team before you meet with the client to say, hey, I'm meeting with client XYZ on Friday.
Right.
I want to have some time with you because these are my questions, but I'm more interested in your questions. Instructional designers, by and large, are always willing to help because they know that time is the most incredible resource that we have, right? So if they can give you some questions that's going to decrease the amount of time that they need to work on a particular project, they're happy.
So do you feel, okay, that makes sense. Now, when you were talking about earlier, when you're in that leadership role, a lot of times your goal is to just build clarity. Clarity out of ambiguity is the term that we've kind of thrown around sometimes, right? We're building clarity out of ambiguity. And sometimes that you're just trying to understand what they want, but sometimes you're helping them build the clarity. What are maybe an example of a client you've worked with where you've done that, and how did that kind of come about and really help the project?
I'm thinking of one particular client that was an academic client, and they were like ready to go gangbusters, right? They wanted 50 courses done in a span of 2 or 3 months. Right. And I said, I think you want about 15. And they thought I was crazy, right? Because as an entity that gets paid by course, of course, we want 50. And I said, well, we can deliver 50. However, 15 starting out the gate may be a better solution for you. We'll get you to your 50. But we want to start slowly so that we can build some good habits in. the client really saw me as a trusted partner at that point. We settled on doing 10 to start, with a quick follow-up for additional courses, so they felt as if we had the momentum. But as we were asking questions about processes and policies that they may or may not have even had in place, they thanked me for only having the 10 courses, because we spent a lot of time up front getting that done.
Right. So that's great. So you're bringing your expertise and helping them to form some clarity, or helping them recognize that they didn't have clarity really on a lot of the policies and so forth.
Yes.
So that's great. So once they understood that, you're able to shift, right? Great. Excellent. Great. Okay. So what are some differences now? Before we started kind of recording here, we were talking about there's kind of two different ways you could categorize working with a client, or a SME, or subject matter expert, whoever that is you're working with. And some of these are, so we could categorize them as internal clients. So for example, we at Franklin University, we're always working with our faculty members to create courses for our master's degrees and so forth.
Correct.
Our doctorates and our bachelor degrees. And then we also have external clients, where we'll work with some of these other universities or very large corporations, nonprofit organizations to help them. So what are some of the differences now that you're seeing between these two types of roles? How does that shift how you might approach working with those clients?
I'll have to be honest. I like working with the external clients a lot more sometimes.
Oh, really? I'm surprised. Don't tell me why.
True confessions. And a lot of times it's because the external clients are coming at a point of need, right? An internal client may not always see the value of the instructional design process, and they're thinking, my course has been fine for 15 years. Why are we touching it now? So the external clients, a lot of times, they know that there is a vested interest in getting something done, regardless if it's a mandate or a change in initiative, or there's some force there. I think what can become more challenging, however, with an external client is if you have a decision maker that does not understand or respect the process. And so they see dollar signs and they see the time that it takes to do something. They don't understand, nor do they want to learn anything about the process. And so sometimes my role is to help satisfy that pace of saying, we are making this amount of progress in this amount of time, so that as if they feel that they're getting bang for their buck, but at the same time trying to educate them at least a little bit on what we do.
Great. So it sounds like it's kind of a fun challenge in a way, right? Because you're trying to pull them along and help them understand, while at the same time satisfying their needs. Okay.
Correct. And that can be daunting at times, especially if your recommendation is something different than what they actually had envisioned. And I go back to that trust factor and say, okay, if we do it your way, let's make a decision. We'll pilot it at this point. If it doesn't work, commit to me that we'll look at other alternative options.
Excellent. Those are great consulting principles, right? Okay. Another thought here. So a lot of times an organization may be considering creating their own design shop, right? Instructional design shop. And so I know you've had some experience in leading various design organizations, and then even here at Franklin University, you helped create an arm or a branch of the design group.
Sure.
That,
Startup.
later exactly. So just talk about that. What are some of the strategies for setting that up so you can most effectively work with your clients?
I think the entire team knows my mantra of stay in your lane. What is your lane? Defining roles for who is on the team and what they do, and ensuring that they are able to maximize not only their talent, but have the room to be successful, okay, at that one area. Now, I am fond of making people's lanes larger, but understanding that this is their lane. So when we're looking at a startup especially, being very, very intentional about hiring a team that does specific things very well, and then allowing them to do that. Understanding the interdependencies of those roles so that, if you have a bottleneck in one part, that's going to create a situation that may affect delivery.
Right. What are some of so this organization, started out with you and then hired a couple people, and then it really, really grew. Mm-hmm. And you ended up the volume of work, I know, expanded very rapidly. Mm-hmm. What were some of the real big obstacles you ran into when you were building this design shop or creating this organization?
I think like every organization, you want full-time dedicated people to your projects, right?
Yes,
and oftentimes that's not going to be the reality. Mm-hmm. And so I have to start thinking about hiring part-time staff that are well-seasoned professionals so that the learning ramp-up time is lessened, as well as just being very critical about that and understanding, right? Mm-hmm. The good news is when you have an environment where part-time people can be found and they are very helpful, good people, and you treat them just like you treat the full-time people, right? So you give them less work, but it is the same quality of work that you're looking for. It's also critical that if you find someone that is not a fit, that you make the adjustment as quickly and as painlessly as possible. And it happens to all of us in the best of intentions for a variety of reasons. But staying, checking in with the team, understanding that, and making that adjustment if you have to.
That makes sense. So, and I've noticed that over the years as we've worked together, you have a really keen focus on hiring the right person and having the right people in place, because that decreases so many of the other potential issues that might come up. So that's great.
Yes, my main advice is to hire well.
Yes.
And you hire well by knowing what it is you're looking for specifically.
Great.
And my track record is pretty high. It's not 100%, but it seems to be pretty good.
Well, and some of that's just your experience. Many years working with people, seeing what kind of characteristics work. You and I have been in the hiring process together where you'll say something doesn't feel right? And it's almost this instinctual reaction. It's very impressive, actually. So one last thing, and maybe you've given a lot of ideas and tips here, just kind of reflecting on what we talked about, and maybe something we didn't talk about here. What is one piece of advice that you really wish that each manager of instructional design or leader of instructional design or even an instructional designer themselves, what's your advice for working with clients? The number one piece of advice. Maybe there's more than one, but.
Wow. Yes. I'd like to go back to that seek to understand.
Great.
I feel very strongly about that. And even when I've had a situation where the funding dried up and the project had to be scrapped, the client still felt as if I heard them and I understood, and what actually came out of it was another opportunity for a future project. Because we didn't deliver, we didn't have an opportunity to deliver, but the way that I made them feel in the process, they knew that they wanted to work with me again.
Very cool. So that relationship of trust, really understanding who they are, and them knowing that you understand, that's powerful. Well, great. Well, sadly, our time is up. It's gone fast. Thank you, Niccole, for being here, and thanks for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.